I recognize the honourable member for Nevis 11.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to make my brief intervention on the bill currently before this Honourable House, the Nevis Island Administration Civil Proceeding Bill 2023, which is of course a bill to provide for the Nevis Island Administration to sue and be sued in its capacity as an organ of the Crown and for related matters. Madam Speaker, I rise to make my contribution, and I actually want to start by giving God thanks for the opportunity to be here, to make my contribution. And why I say that, we always have to give God thanks, but I'll put that into context as to why I give God thanks. This matter that we are now dealing with had its roots all the way back to 2017. And of course, the Attorney General was not the Attorney General then. And the Premier of Nevis, of course, was the Premier then. I was, at that time, the Minister of Lands and responsible for lands on the island of Nevis. And indeed, under the ordinance that governs acquisition of lands, indeed, I was the minister who would have brought this particular matter to the cabinet then. And even though at that time there were other issues relating to this particular case of this particular acquisition, as a matter of fact, I believe the matter was still live at the Privy Council at the point in time. And I say that because we made a decision then as the Nevis Island Administration, with the powers that were entrusted in us as an administration, we made a decision to proceed with the acquisition. The acquisition was done according to and consistent with the ordinance. And indeed, the Nevis Island Administration is now the owners of those lands. But I say all that to say that I was there from the beginning. And I was there when the acquisition was done. I was there when the default judgment was ruled in favor of Ocean Reef then and against the Nevis Island Administration. I was there when the senior counsel, Terence Byron, his name was mentioned before, and I give him commendation along with legal counsel from the Nevis legal department, Ms. Rhonda Nisbet Brown, who handled that case at that point in time. I was there when the matter was determined to be taken to the appeals court, that is, sorry. And I was there when the judgment was handed down by the appeals court. One that I believe all of us were surprised with, one that all of us had our difficulties with, and one that today we are here seeking to remedy an anomaly that occurred then. Of course, the judicial arm of government would have done what they had to do. Now the legislative body has to do what it has to do as well. And that's why we are here as legislators, Madam Speaker. We are here entrusted with that responsibility to correct any difficulties, any ills, or any circumstances that may arise that will create difficulties for this federation, whether it is from the Nevis end, as we are dealing with today, or from the federal end. At some point, I'm certain that we'll be back here to deal with other anomalies that the legislative body is being called upon to remedy. And so, born out of that judgment, we have had a lot of discussions, and indeed, discussions along the political lines, discussions along the constitutional lines. We have heard a lot of good points being expressed here this morning, and I embrace them all. And I must say also, Madam Speaker, that we live in a time when persons are now exposed to all sorts of platforms. And indeed, we live in a democratic society. People will say whatever they so desire. Who am I to stop them? where you have the ability to rectify situations that may arise, we are asked to do so, and we are doing so. And so this morning we're here with this important bit of legislation that I am certain once we leave here with the 2/3 majority or support that we are seeking, will put an end to some of the doubts and some of the difficulties that that judgment rendered in August of 2022 would have created for the Nevis Island administration. I personally, from my standpoint, never had any difficulties in terms of where we stood as an administration. Because here's what I've said to my colleagues. The day after the judgment, we got up, we went to work. The premier was still the premier of the day. The ministers were still ministers doing what they were mandated to do. Civil servants came to work and performed their duties. The government continued to enter into certain transactions. So nothing changed as far as I'm concerned at that time. But to lay some or put some of the doubts aside, or put it to rest, so to speak, we have come today full circle to ensure that these debates will no longer persist, but rather the Nevis Island administration will continue to do what it has done for the last 40 years, and that is to govern the affairs of the island of Nevis, in partnership, of course, with the federal government, as mandated by this document, the Constitution of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And so the debates will rage on in many ways, and persons would have different views and opinions as we go along. But as we evolve as a nation, we have to understand that these things will happen. But in our process of evolving as a nation, as a legislative body, we have to understand that we have to come here and we have to do what has to be done by us as legislators. There are other bills that I'm sure will be debated moving forward. And when we are out of this parliament, there are other difficulties that will arise. And I am hoping that the legislators of the day will do what is necessary to correct those difficulties. But Madam Speaker, the member for Nevis 9 would have asked for the support of the Parliament on this particular bill, and I see no reason why we should not get that support, because when it's all said and done, we are here to work as a harmonious body on both sides, because we will support the other side when time comes. It will come. And I'm sure the other side has no difficulty, along with all of the other elected members on this side of the aisle. So I will prefer their support or urge them to support, and in so doing, let me wish this particular bill safe passage. I wasn't intending to be long, because I believe that the legal side of it was already handled by the two learned lawyers who were presented before me. And who am I to question? Who am I to seek to repeat? Who am I to even bother to touch anything that they have touched, because they would have done so in an eloquent way. But I just felt that I had to lend my support in this fashion, because I was there from the beginning. And I'm here still at this particular juncture when the Parliament is seeking to erase any doubts that may have come out of that particular judgment, born out of the action that, as Minister of Lands then, that I would have taken, not knowing that we would have come here today because of a judgment that would have created such difficulty and such consternation. But that being said, Madam President, I wish this bill once again safe passage, and seek the support of all of the elected members of this Parliament as we seek to remedy a situation that we consider to be a difficult one, but one that can be rectified by all of us. I thank you.
Thank you to the Honourable Member for Nevis 11.